Good morning. Welcome to the Surfside Kolel Boker at shul.com. We are here in the dark because Surfside this morning, at least parts of Surfside, have no electricity due to the impending rain and wind that is coming, that has come. It's been awkward, but that's what it is in Surfside, and it's a little bit better than being in the 41 degrees of New York. Let's begin. This morning we're talking about Rav. Yeah, you always have to uzdan a little bit and stick it back to the New Yorkers that are freezing over there. It's part of the enjoyment of living here in Surfside when you get summer all year long. Okay, so we lost electric for a couple of hours. I bet you another few minutes will be on, and everything will be okay. All right. Anyway, we're talking about Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein from the book V'ha'arivna. It's a book that discusses all like wild cases that happen in Israel. Really interesting stuff. Today we're going to talk about an interesting case. We're going to call two people, one Reuven, one Shimon. Reuven owns a piece of land. It's a piece of land that he's seemingly unable to build anything on. It's not zoned for any type of construction, and he has it. And for years he's kind of couldn't figure out like what to do with this piece of land. So after a while, people saw there was an abandoned piece of land, no one's building on it. They started dumping things, and it became like a little bit of a garbage dump. All right, so he said, you know what? I'm tired of this. Let me just get my money out of here and go invest in something else. He puts the property for sale. Comes Shimon, and Shimon sees it, and he gives him exactly his asking price. So Reuven is very happy. He didn't even negotiate. He took, give me my asking price, and he sells him the land, being that he figures it's just a dump. You can't build anything on it, and that's it. Have a good day. Lo and behold, he passes by a week later, Reuven, and he notices on his lot a tremendous, gorgeous vinyl banner and sign, luxury condominiums coming soon. And he says to himself, what do you mean luxury condominiums? That piece of land is not zoned for anything. Lo and behold, Shimon was a sharp guy. He went to the city. He worked with the council, with the committee, the municipal council, everything in the city. And he had the council vote in a closed-door meeting prior to the sale that Reuven and Shimon made to have the land rezoned. So now the piece of land, which seemingly was not zoned before for anything, which has a very low value, now that it's zoned, you could put, let's say, 5 stories of luxury condominiums or apartments, the value shot up. Now when Reuven found this out, he said there must be something wrong here. He goes, if I had known that I could build on this, I would never have sold it. And for I don't know how many years I've had this property, it wasn't this way. What happened and how did this happen? He went to Shimon and he said, Shimon, what happened here? And he found out that Shimon was involved with he was the one who actually helped change the law. Shimon saw a vacant piece of land, not zoned properly. He went to the city. He had them change the law. So Reuven said, look, I'm not happy about this sale, and had I known about this situation, I would never have sold it to you. Shimon says to him, listen, you had an asking price. I didn't negotiate. I gave you your asking price, and I bought it. Reuven says, I want my money back, and I want to relist it at market value of what it's worth. Who is right and who is wrong? And does Reuven have the power from the Torah law in order to annul the sale? It's a very good question. I'm sure this has happened before. I want to set forth a couple of the things. When the sale was done, the zoning had already been completed, the change of the zoning. Shimon did not buy the land until the zoning was already changed and he knew that he could build. He didn't buy the land and then go and have it changed. He did it before. What do you think should happen here? Should Reuven get his money back? Or said, listen, Reuven, you got what you asked for. You didn't negotiate. You sold it. You're happy. Until you found out that this guy was building, you were very thrilled that you sold it. Now that you found out that you could build luxury, suddenly you want to back out.
If this happened in Surfside, Shimon would be 100% in the clear.
Shimon would be in the clear.
According to Torah.
According to Torah, still.
So you're saying like U.S. law, the guy would be in the clear. What do you mean? You sold them the land. Have a good day.
Well, Evan, you act on equal information. You had the chance to go rezone it. He got it done. You couldn't get it done. You're going to do it.
So the only issue here is that the rezoning meeting was done. It was a closed door meeting, and Shimon was the proprietor to make this happen. Meaning, so, and being that it was prior to the sale, it was in closed doors. I mean, look, he could have done maybe a FOIL request, which is a Freedom of Information Law request. He could have said, hey, listen, what's going on in the town? He didn't. Maybe he didn't do his research.
Yeah, that's,
Well,
But
it says in the Torah, do not mislead the blind.
They're not mislead the blind.
You just bought. You just.
Right?
Doesn't it?
Because you have
If you
interpretations of
negotiated, then
everything.
you'd be in very big
no,
trouble.
because it's misleading,
because you
and
knew
then
what was
there's
gonna happen,
going
and
out of your
that's
way to
where
volunteer
it's,
information.
So Ariel, you think Ariel, if he negotiated, would have made a difference?
Oh, that's the only situation where I'd say he's wrong.
Oh, because Shimon would have negotiated, but he didn't negotiate.
Shimon, he's like, oh, I know this. Let me negotiate. Just stop and negotiate. But if you negotiate, you're putting yourself in trouble only because then it starts
It's a
getting a little
double,
fishy.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Let's take a look what he has to say here. He says here the Torah does not permit anyone to cheat in sales. Let me explain. We're going to go through it and we'll see. It's brought down in Parashat Behad. You must not cheat one another. You're not allowed to cheat people in business. Let's take a look. He goes, but this isur applies only to sellers that sell widgets and products to unsuspecting customers. But it says, one second, it says not, I apologize. The prohibition does not only include people who sell like a widget or a product to a buyer on it. And he says here, but also to buyers who underprice a purchase from unsuspecting sellers. It's two issues here. There's one, if you overprice is a problem, and also if a buyer underprices it from the seller. Let's say the seller is an old 92-year-old lady who has a one-story house, Jewish lady. She don't know. She thinks the house is still worth $87,000, even though it's worth $900,000, and he offers her $100,000, and she's thrilled, but she don't know what it's worth. She thinks she's still living in the 1941 zone, and she didn't educate herself. So there's two issues. If you underprice as a buyer, the seller, and that's considered a cheating avon, and it's the same way also if the seller does it. Let's take a look what he says. One might think that the seller, Shimon, Reuven, should know best how to charge for his merchandise, or let's say, or his real estate, and has no right to complain. Why does he have no right? Because the Torah says otherwise. Even a seller can get ripped off by a customer who cheats him and tricks him for settling less than he deserves. And it's brought down in the Sefer Chinuch 337. Do you understand it so far where we at? So someone cannot underprice, let's say a sharp buyer cannot underprice a seller, and a sharp seller cannot cheat or overcharge a buyer. Okay? Now let's take a look here. So it might seem that this avon here was ona'ah. What's ona'ah? Ona'ah is cheating, or even furthermore, making somebody suffer. So when the case of cheating, maybe there was a cheating situation here. There's only one thing. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat 227-229, it says that ona'ah does not apply to real estate. Cheating does not apply to real estate. It applies to a product, a widget, like in business. Let's say you want to sell nuts, you want to sell phones, you want to sell tables. That's a product. But when it comes to karka, the Choshen Mishpat says real estate does not have any issue of ona'ah, which is very, very interesting. Real estate karka.
Makes sense.
And you see, we've seen here in Surfside what has happened. Houses that were $700,000 went to $1.5 million, then they went back down, and then they went back up, and now they're going back down again. Their value is not there. That's why you see so many homes here for sale. Unless more people move in, the demand is going to probably diminish. But let's take a look. Is there another reason to annul the sale that happened here between Reuven and Shimon? Let's take a look. There's something called in halacha mekach ta'ut. Mekach ta'ut is when a person makes a sale under a false or mistaken presumption. He assumed something and he made the sale, but had he known otherwise, he would never have made the sale. The Gemara in Ketubot 97a tells that there was a story of a wheat shortage that happened in Bavel in Nehar De'ah. Where's Nehar De'ah? Nehar De'ah, I believe, is modern-day Baghdad, or the greater part of modern-day Baghdad. Yeah, Nehar De'ah was a big city. It was Surah, Pompedita, Nehar De'ah. So this story happened in Nehar De'ah in Ketubot 97a, where there was a shortage of wheat. And the prices went so high that people started selling their real estate and their homes just to buy food because they needed to survive. It's not like it is today where you have communication where you know things are coming and going. They didn't know. There was no wheat shortage. They sold whatever they had just to have food to eat because they'd rather survive than have a home without being able to survive. Now, after they sold their homes, what happened? A new shipment of wheat arrived into the town, and upon arrival, all the prices went back down to normal. They went from exorbitant prices and they went back down. Now, this was wheat. Remember, this is a product, it's not real estate. So let's take a look here. Now, when they sold their homes, these people, to buy the wheat was already in transit to the location. But they didn't know that because there was no communication. Now, the only thing was it was being flooded because some of the waterways had issues with waters rising. So because the waterways were flooded, it had a delay arriving on time. Now, this forced the merchants to take the wheat that was coming through a longer route, but it was already scheduled to arrive. What happened when Rav Nachman, who was the rabbi of the city, found this out, and he realized that people didn't know and they overpaid, he accepted their claim of all the people and annulled all the previous sales that were done for the wheat. Because he said, had people known that in another 3-4 days wheat were coming, they would never have sold their homes and overpaid an exorbitant price. They did it because they had no idea.
They sold their homes for cheap.
They sold their homes for any price just to buy wheat at a high price.
Oh, okay.
So they sold their
real available.
They were paying an exorbitant price for the wheat because they thought that was all they were going to have for the foreseeable future. So the Rav Zilberstein says, in this case too, Reuven had known that his land had already been rezoned. He would never have sold the property. So what he's saying here is that had Reuven had insight that let's say the town published in the newspaper, this road is being now rezoned for 5-story buildings, he would never have sold it. He didn't know. So he was on the low in regards to information, and he was lacking the information. And because of this, he too can claim what's called mekach ta'ud even in a real estate deal. Because had he known that this was zoned in a different way, he would never have sold it at that price, and subsequently Shimon would not have got it at that great deal. So it's a very interesting case because we started with saying that when it came to real estate, there's no ona'ah, there's no issue of cheating when it came to real estate as brought down in Shulchan Aruch. But later on, there was an issue of mekach ta'ut, because had he known further about the details, he would never have sold it. Any questions?
Yeah, it's like you buy a house, right? It's under contract, and then he can figure out how to rezone it if he wants. If he can't rezone it, then he'll just that's contingent. Like,
yeah, but he did this
He did it prior. So it's a little different because I'll tell you why.
It was because of him. It wasn't zoned. Reuven was right that it wasn't. He couldn't have gone like this.
So
it was because of Shimon's work and savviness that he made it work.
You're right. You're 100% right that it was a savviness, but was it done after he made the sale and went into contract, or was it done before? And by the way, he kept it under the.
He took a bigger risk. He chose to not be under contract and that someone else would buy it and do the work. I think he did more risk. Usually, what someone would do is go under contract and then figure it out. But he even did more.
It's less risk.
I would look at him as more.
No, but it was less risk. All right, I'll tell you why it's less risk. Let's say, give a good example. Let's say this house right here next door. This house next door is worth what? 1.2, 1.3 million. We're on Abbott over here. There's not that much demand because you're right. You're in like in a semi-commercial district here. Yeah. Okay. Let's say we know that there's a closed door meeting that this entire parking lot is now going to become residential homes. So both sides of the street are now going to be residential. There's not going to be any more commercial on the other side. The city decided we're going to put 20 homes on the other side. Okay. Now, you're the only one who knows this. So what do? You start to buy up all these houses because you know the moment that people find this out and they start building them, it goes up. The law was already changed. The zoning was already done. And then you're going in. Now, these people may not know about it. That would be an issue of mekach ta'ut.
Even if it's public information?
So it's good. That's a good question. Here, Rabbi Zilberstein brought up very specifically that it was a closed-door meeting and nobody knew about it. I think that
like corruption.
Yeah, I think that if it was public, I think the case would be very different. Because if it was public in the paper and the guy didn't see it, that's his business. That's his business. But here, because nobody knew of it other than Shimon and that other group, and also Shimon was the proprietor to make this happen, this changes, I think, the case, and it's an interesting response. Baruch Adonai, Le'olam, Amen v'Amen.